Love is a measure of our maturity. How we treat others, especially those with whom we disagree, says a lot about our spiritual and emotional health. Welcome to Westside.
You are always faithful. You will never leave. You are always faithful to me. Faithful to me. Faithful to me. Faithful to me.
Have you ever found yourself using the term "I need" a lot? I found myself doing this recently, and I think it's because I'm in a place where I'm a little exhausted, I'm a little scared of maybe what's coming next in my life, and I found myself trying to control my environment by grabbing a hold of things that I think I need. Now that can provide, in the short term, a really sweet elixir to the problems that ail my soul. But the fact of the matter is that we need to understand what we truly need in order to live the life that God is asking us to live. I love what Paul says in the book of Philippians in chapter 4, starting at verse 10. He says, "How I praise the Lord that you're concerned about me again," talking to the church of Philippi. "I know you've always been concerned for me, but you didn't have a chance to help me. Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have." Now, check this out. This is important. "I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's on a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Even so, you've done well to share with me in my present difficulty." So what Paul is saying, he's not saying, but just by the force of willpower, I can try harder and then all of a sudden I can have everything that I want. He's saying, I understand that life will take me in all kinds of different directions. Sometimes life will feel like it's full and I have plenty, and other times I'll feel like I'm starving. But the key is, from Paul, is he's saying, even in the middle of all this, because I know what I actually need, I can exist in any one of these circumstances at any moment in time. So now for you, I don't know what you're facing. We're all usually facing at least something with some level of difficulty at every moment in time. I want you to understand that you can overcome and you can come through everything. Again, not just by praying louder and harder, although prayer is a beautiful thing, but you overcome instead of by slowing down and evaluating, all right, what do I actually need? How simple is this really? And when we understand that we really, really need Jesus in our lives, that we need some loving relationships around us, and we need a confidence in understanding that God is with us everywhere that we go, all of a sudden every environment becomes a place where God comes and communes with us. So let's do our best, starting this week, each and every single one of us, to evaluate, is this a want or is this a need? Now we could pursue wants, but I want you to understand when we come to this point where we say, I can't get everything that I want, and we lean on everything that we need, that's when that peace that passes understanding enters into our hearts and souls and minds, and we begin to live the way that God has called us to live.
As a freshman in high school, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. The doctor told me that it was just a chemical imbalance in my brain. And in order to balance that out, he gave me antidepressants and medication. I started to lose faith that God was real or existed. Inside, doubted that I would ever be healed, that I would ever be made whole again. I had a moment one night where I stopped and I said, Jesus, you're the only one who's gonna be able to fix this. The medication isn't working. I'm not feeling better. The counselor's not working. You have to heal me. You have to do something. He stepped in that moment. There was no big life change, but I felt the presence of God near. After coming off of the medication, I had to learn a new normal. I didn't bounce back. I was not the kid that I was before this all happened, and I had to learn how to function in a new way. I still didn't feel a lot. I still was pretty unemotional, and as I felt things, I thought I was getting healthy. I would recognize an emotion and put it to the side without ever really feeling it or experiencing it or analyzing where it was coming from or why. All of that pushing down caught up with me 12 years later when I had my first anxiety attack. After the first anxiety attack, I continued to feel sick and unsettled and knew physically my body was under attack in some ways because of what was happening emotionally and mentally inside. Through the process of walking through my trauma with a counselor, I found that bringing things into the light brought freedom, and it unburdened me in the heavy weight that I had been carrying for so many years. It's been a long road getting from that moment to where I am today. A lot of pain, a lot of struggles, and a lot of allowing Jesus to walk with me and asking him to stay inside the journey with me. I've had to learn how I'm wired and how I process things and why I do or don't feel things the same as other people, and to know that those aren't bad things, but to learn the goodness inside of them. I think it's important for us to find the people and the spaces in which we find safety and to allow those people to see us and know us. We need to remember that we're not alone, that there's a God who loves us fiercely and wants to walk in freedom with us. Keep your eyes on him and hold on to that glimmer of hope.
So I want to tell you two stories from the life and love of Jesus, two narratives, two of my favorite narratives of the ministry and of Jesus. And then I'm going to spend a few minutes applying those two stories to our emotional and spiritual health, all right? So the first story I want to read to you is from John chapter 4. If you've been in church for a while, you're going to know both of these stories really well, but they bear like reading again because they're just such a great picture of how Jesus loved in the midst of the life that he lived. Chapter 4, verse 4, Jesus had to go through Samaria on the way. By the way, a little background here is that he was Jewish, and Jewish and Samaritans did not get along. Jewish people were very anti-Samaria. Matter of fact, many times they would travel a greater distance just to walk around Samaria rather than having to go through Samaria. And so that they would just, the Jewish people kind of thought Samaritans as like half-breeds and just very negative towards them. And so here we see that they had to go through Samaria on their way. And eventually he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Just get that picture of Jesus is bone tired. And he's just like, he's worn out. And so he sits at this well. That's not unusual, right? He just sits there and he's just going to take a break, and his disciples are going to leave him to go get some food. Well, soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her. Now, if you're a Jewish person in the first century reading this, and you get to that phrase, and Jesus said to her, you're immediately going, what? One, Jews didn't talk to Samaritans, right? Men didn't talk to foreign women at wells. I mean, that was inappropriate. I hope you understand. I hope you get that. This was not an appropriate conversation for Jesus to be having with this woman, but he's Jesus. Gets to do what he wants, right? And he said to her, please give me a drink. He's that tired that he's willing to have, he shows his vulnerability, and Evan's going to talk about this next week. He shows his vulnerability to this woman, and he was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The verse 9, the woman was surprised. Of course she was, for all the reasons I just mentioned. For Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. And so she said to Jesus, you're a Jew. You know that, right? You're a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink? And Jesus replied, if you only knew the gift God has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me and I would give you living water. If you've never read this story, you need to go to John 4 later today and just read through the entire chapter. It's this beautiful picture of how Jesus was so present to this woman, how he was connected. He wanted to know her and her story. He actually even told her some of her story that there's no way that he can know, but he had a word of knowledge from God. And he was like, just sharing this and just like, I want to be part of your life. And she ends up getting saved and the entire village with her. And it's an amazing story. Well, we'll come back to that in a minute. Let me tell you another story. Luke chapter 19, probably one of my favorite stories of the life and love of Jesus is in Luke chapter 19. Jesus is going to have an interaction with a guy named Zacchaeus. And Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus, and he was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. Okay, a little background on this guy. So he's Jewish, and he is working for the Roman government. That right there makes him very unpopular with his Jewish brothers and sisters. Not only is he working for the enemy, Rome, because Rome at that time had occupied Judea, the place of the Jewish people, and the Jews did not want them there. Matter of fact, they were waiting for the Messiah, who was Jesus, but they didn't recognize him as the Messiah. But they're waiting for the Messiah to come and get and free them from Roman oppression. And this guy's working for Rome. Not only is he working for Rome, but he personally had become very rich working for Rome. So he is doubly canceled. I mean, nobody's going to have anything to do with this guy. So he tries to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. I'm pretty sure somebody wanted to include that he was short. As a short man, I understand what they're doing right there. Anyways, enough said. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. It's amazing. I mean, not only, he just got done talking to a Samaritan woman. I know the timeline anyways. He was talking to a Samaritan woman at a well. Now he's talking to this tax collecting Jew, Zacchaeus. He said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. I want to have dinner with you. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down, you can imagine, and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. He was probably thinking that Jesus inviting himself over for dinner might have been justifying his behavior potentially. I don't know, right? Anyway, but he was really excited and a lot of joy, but the people were what? Displeased. What people? All the people. Every single person that was in the crowd following Jesus, Roman, Jewish, they were all upset. Even the Samaritans probably were a little upset too. Because this guy he was in Rome's pocket and he was against his people. So they were very displeased. And he's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half of my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Something happened in his interaction with Jesus that caused him a life change. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save those who are lost. But as I thought about how he was able to give his full attention to the Samaritan woman, to Zacchaeus. It just on and on. I could tell you more and more stories about Jesus' presence, how he was fully present. I started wondering, well, what was it just because there was no technology, or was there things that Jesus actually could have been distracted by, but he chose not to be? And I thought about the Roman oppression. I mean, Rome, they were in charge. Jewish people didn't have the same rights as Roman citizens. They were oppressed. And Jesus doesn't say one thing about it. In all of the Gospels, you can't really find, the most he says is give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. That's the most, and that's not even negative towards Caesar, really. He doesn't even talk about it. The Roman oppression, it was huge. Matter of fact, there were Jewish rebellions happening before, during, and after the time of Jesus. His people rebelling against the Roman rule, and he doesn't talk about that either. There's no record of him engaging in these very current events for him. What about the hate for Samaritans? He keeps running contrary to that. Inviting Zacchaeus to dinner. He's running contrary to his culture, his religious context even. He was just fully present. Here's some practical ways to be present. We all know this one. Turn off the tech. I was on a run the other day with my dog over at, I'm not even gonna tell you which park because I don't want you to take your dog there, but it's an off-leash park. It's a wonderful park. If you like running or walk with your dog off-leash, it's a great park. Google it. And so I was out running and there was a person, I passed them several times on my run, and every time the Bluetooth headset was in and they were talking on their phone, doing work. And it just really made me mad. I was like, I actually wanted to stop her. I said, you're not spending any time with your dog. I got very judgy, Mike. I got very judgy, and we'll talk about that one in just a minute. But I was like, be present. Man, you're walking by the river with your dog. It can't get any better than that. But we're busy, we're so distracted. So turn off the technology, turn it off. I'm not saying turn it off indefinitely. You can if you want. but turn it off once a week, once a day. Just have times where you just like, I'm going to put it away, and I'm not going to respond to the emails. I'm not going to respond to the text messages. I'm not going to respond to social media. I'm just going to take, there's going to be a set time every day or week that I'm not going to get on. Here's another practical way that you can be present. When you think of someone, call that someone. Every time now when a name drops into my heart, I wonder how that so-and-so's doing. I text so-and-so. I want to find, hey, how you doing? And it's amazing how timely some of those conversations end up being in their life. Don't discount the work of the Holy Spirit doing things like that, where he just drops a name and someone that you haven't seen for a while, or you're wondering how someone's doing, reach out to him. A third way, go on long walks with friends and without the tech, right? Don't be doing this on your walk, right? Or dinner times with the kids. They'll hate you for it for a while. Turn off your cell phone. Take it away. Put it in a little container until dinner's over. And you do that long enough, dinner time will be some of the best conversations you've ever had with your children. It'll take some time, because they'll be irritated for a while, but get used to it, and it'll just all of a sudden be so much better. And this is a really interesting about the story of Zacchaeus. Jesus, throughout his life, was for the poor and the marginalized. He actually said, I came for the poor. I mean, Luke chapter 4, I came to seek and to save the lost. I came for those that didn't have. I came for the poor and the marginalized. That was his mission statement. So doesn't it seem a bit inconsistent that Jesus would go to the house of a tax-collecting Jewish man who is keeping the poor and marginalized poor and marginalized? That, for me, was like, well, what? That's why everyone in the crowd was so displeased. Because Jesus came. I mean, his message of reconciliation to God was very caught up. That people were caught up in that were poor and marginalized. They were like, this is what we've been waiting to hear. Someone that wants equality and all of these things, right? And then all of a sudden he goes to the home of a tax collector. I mean, what? If you ever wondered that God plays favorites, just remember what Jesus did with Zacchaeus. There are no favorites for God. He loves everyone. He wants everyone. He wishes that no one would be lost, even the people that you don't like. Even the people that if you could, you would cancel them. The people that you have defriended on Facebook. Jesus wants them too. And that just tells you, I mean, if anyone that Jesus should judge, it was Zacchaeus. Man, bring down the fire, Lord. This guy is not good. And he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. It's become normalized, isn't it, in our culture to disapprove of anyone who has a dissenting view from us and to do it publicly. And that's not a political statement, though it is a political statement, because everything in our society is this way now. It's just so normal to judge people that don't think the same way we do or believe the same way that we do. And that's a slippery slope that doesn't represent the life and love of Jesus. Karl Barth, a theologian, said that judging others leads us into the root and origin of sin, the arrogance in which man wants to be his own and his neighbor's judge. I don't know about you, but when I focus on judging others that I disagree with, the only person really hurt in that equation is me. It causes anxiety in me. And I'm like, why are they saying that? What are they thinking? Why don't they do, it's just, I'm the one getting anxious. I haven't even said anything to this person. They're just living their life, doing their thing. But me judging someone else causes anxiety and depression and all of that in my own life, right? So here's some practical ways about not being judgmental. Practice curiosity. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, listen to them. See, why do they think that? And don't judge them for thinking that. Like, why do you think that? Ask them, tell me more about that. If we're not open to being changed by listening to someone else, then what happens is every conversation is just a one-sided monologue where we're trying to convince someone else of something. And there's no life there. So every conversation has a level of curiosity. Here's a couple things you can do. Try new things. This will create openness in your heart. This will create I'm open to new things. Food. Try food now, not broccoli, I'm not saying that because that's over the top. It shouldn't even be part of the food group thing. It's awful. But try other food, try new food. I was thinking of my son Spencer, he's 17. For one of his last projects in school this last week, he had to make some food and then we got to grade it. Thankfully, I was traveling and Suzanne had to grade it. You know what he decided to make? Avocado sweet potato toast. No, awful. What? Sweet potatoes, I don't like sweet potatoes. I don't like avocados. That's a little strange, I know, but he put these things together. And Suzanne was like, this is amazing. That was surprising enough that he did that all by himself. But you know what was more surprising? He liked it. He was open. He was curious. He was like, oh, let me try some new food. Maybe go on an adventure you've been wanting to do, but you've never had the courage to do it. Relationships, be open. Meet with someone that's not like you and practice curiosity. Just intentionally, meet with that, crazy liberal aunt that you have in your family, or that conservative uncle that you just spend time with them and listen to them, ask them questions. And it's amazing to me when I talking to a Christ follower and we're talking about some present day event and they start telling me what they think about it. And because I'd watched that news channel the night before, I'm like, you're seeing exactly like, how did you memorize that script so quickly? Like you're just saying exactly what they said the night before on the news. That's amazing. And I wonder if they could do that with Psalm 23 or the Lord's Prayer. And I know this is gonna get all preachy guilty on you right now, but when you can quote arguments for your bias, for your side of an argument, better than you can quote this, there is something wrong with this church. There's something wrong. And I'm gonna lay it on just a little bit more because this is truth. Everything else is at best a glimmer of truth, at best. This is truth. And there's enough in here to spend a lifetime trying to figure out what did they mean by that? What are they trying to say? I wonder if there's any bias in the Bible. Just asking some of those kinds of questions. You could spend your entire life just doing that and not being caught up. If you're gonna get caught up in anything, get caught up in the book of John. Get caught up in this, which means if you're gonna do that, it means you're gonna have to turn some things off. It means you're gonna have to listen to some other voices a little bit less. Why is this important? Well, I hope you see one reason that making love a measure of your maturity is for your own sake. For your own spiritual and emotional health, love is the best answer. But I also hope that you see that the gospel is at stake. We don't have to accept the narrative that Christians are against the world. Why do we not have to accept that narrative? Because Jesus himself said, for God so loved the world. And he so loved the world. We can change the way our culture views at least this church, at least the people of God called Westside Church, right? Because they so love the world. Man, they're in it, but they're not of it. They're just always present. They're engaged with the things that concern us in our society. So they're always there. And they're never judging us. It's amazing how curious they are about our life, and it's incredible how they don't judge us because we live differently or make different life choices. They're just always present and engaged, and oh man, it's just amazing. So Jesus, would you help us to be that kind of people? Help us, Jesus, to be people who represent you well in this world. That love is a measure of our emotional and spiritual state, that you would help us to become more like you in your love. Help us to, as we read the stories of Zacchaeus and the Samaritan woman and the woman who was that had an issue of blood for 12 years, and how you loved her, and the Roman centurion, and how you loved him by healing his servant, and just all the stories, one after the other, of how you engaged with the world around you in such a way that today, billions of people believe in you. 2,000 plus years after the fact. Not just because you were a great teacher and you had some really interesting things to say, but you loved to the ultimate, where you gave your life for us. You so loved the world that you gave your life for us. Help us, Jesus, to express that radical, audacious love to our world. Lord, help us to never stop talking about how much you love us. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
This is not a stage. The lights of the show, the roar of the crowd, have no place in this grand auditorium. The theater is vast, but the audience is one. Lofty phrases echo throughout, but the applause is saved for the simple. It is here that we meet with God. He is your Father. He knows you. When we fumble over our words, He responds, "Pray like this. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, as above, so below." Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.